I'm 22 years old, and I never thought I'd be tied to a stepmother. Or rather, I never imagined a stranger could enter my father's and my life so easily. That day, it was pouring rain in Florida. I remember it clearly because I was preparing for my final school presentation when I got the call from the hospital. My father, who had always been a careful driver and never even had a flat tire, had been in an accident in the middle of an intersection. The doctor said he was lucky to have survived because he was taken to the hospital in time. And the one who called the ambulance, the one who sat next to him in the cold rain until help arrived, was Mrs. Laura, a fast food worker who had just finished her shift. At first, I didn't think much of her. In my mind, she was just a kind, middle-aged woman. That's it. My father was a principled but affectionate man. My mother had died early, and he raised me alone, never remarried, never dated. I always thought he had decided to live out his life alone. But then Laura appeared. After he recovered, he went to thank her and invited her to lunch. I thought it was just politeness, but only a few months later, he told me, "I'm planning to remarry." I was speechless, not angry, just confused. Even though I was 22, I couldn't imagine my father, who had always been private, developing feelings so quickly for someone he had only known for months. I asked, "Are you sure?" He looked at me calm. "She's not perfect, but I feel it clearly she's good and sincere." I nodded, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. I first met Laura in the backyard. She was cleaning the windows, the afternoon light slanting through her tied-back light brown hair. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Hello, Daniel. I've heard a lot about you." I smiled politely. "Me too, Laura." She didn't try to touch me, didn't force friendliness, didn't interfere. I noticed she often got up early to cook breakfast, left notes if I worked early, sometimes packed me a sandwich when I had long classes. She lived quietly, without pretense, and I had to admit the house felt warmer. A year after their wedding, tragedy struck again. My father was diagnosed with heart disease. It all happened too fast. I took a semester off to take care of him. Laura never left his side, not for a single night. She held his hand, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and when he was too weak to speak, she spoke for him. "He wants you to try. He wants me to do well." The night my father died, she hugged me for the first time. I didn't pull away. I saw then a woman who truly loved him. Afterward, we stayed in the house my father had built when I was a child. Laura didn't cry much. She worked, took extra shifts, cleaned, did laundry, still packed me sandwiches. Every morning at first I kept my distance. Gradually, I stopped thinking of her as a stepmother. I still called her Laura, but strangely I felt closer to her. She wasn't trying to be a mother. She never pretended. She was just there at the right times. I remember once she bought a sauce I hated by mistake. When I was about to react, she said quietly, "This is the first time I cooked for someone, and I thought they'd criticize me." I froze. Did she just call me someone? I smiled faintly, said nothing, and ate the whole salad that night. Without leaving a bite. That's Laura, not loud, not fussy, but changing people in small, quiet ways. I don't know when it happened, but I started wanting to do things just to make her happy, not because she was my father's wife, but because she was the only person after my mother who could make me feel at peace when I came home. My father died on a sunny day, strangely gentle after many days of rain. No one expected him to go so soon. What was supposed to be a long treatment turned into a steep, hopeless decline. Laura didn't cry. She sat by his bed, holding his hand, until his last breath left him. I stood there, petrified. No sobs, no tears, just a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. The funeral was simple. Just as my father wanted some old friends, neighbors, and colleagues. I accepted condolences with dry eyes, though every word stabbed me inside. Laura wore a plain black dress, a single small flower in her hair, the one my father gave her on their first date. She said little, only nodded when approached. But I knew she was fighting not to break. When everyone left, I found her sitting alone on a wooden chair on the porch, the afternoon light casting her shadow down the steps. "I'll sleep in the living room tonight." She said without looking at me, as if talking to herself. I just replied softly, "No need, Mom. I'll sleep out there." That was the first time I called her Mom, even if it was just unconsciously. But I remember the look in her eyes when I heard it. She turned to me very slowly, her eyes wet but strangely bright. Life after that was not easy. I was still in my final semester of college, but had to temporarily take a semester off to stay home, to take care of the funeral and stabilize my life. Laura continued working at the diner, but because she lacked some of my father's income, she had to take on an hourly cleaning job for 2 houses in the neighborhood. I didn't say it, but many times I saw her coming home at 9 o'clock p.m. with a trash bajine, her hand or a stain on her cuff, and I felt choked up. I started applying for a part-time job at a nearby bookstore. I worked during the day and studied for my thesis at night. Laura never complained, in the contrary. She still packed sandwiches for me to take with me and left a small note on the table. "Don't forget to bring a jacket today. It's cold outside." We never talked about her being a stepmother. It wasn't necessary. Love isn't something defined by paperwork or names. It's about who's willing to wait for you to come home late, who's secretly saving up food, or who's quietly sewing up your frayed collar. One evening while I was washing dishes, she came into the kitchen a little hesitant. "Daniel, I know you don't owe me anything, but thank you for not leaving." I smiled, though my heart clenched. We all lose people we love. But if you're here, I'm not alone, and neither are you. She was silent then. She put her hand on my shoulder, a thin hand, but warm. Life gradually settled into a new orbit, though not easily. My mother, and I am why Matharas, I now called her, lived in my father's old house. The space used to feel empty, but somehow her presence made it less cold every morning. She always got up early to cook breakfast. Even though she only ate a few slices of bread, I used to see her quietly rereading my father's favorite book, her hand gently stroking underlined lines. He had left. No one said anything, but we both tried to live as if he were still there watching. One Saturday afternoon, when I came home early from my shift at the bookstore, I saw her busily cleaning the windows on the porch. It was a sunny day. Florida-style hot and muggy sweat soaked her shoulders, but she still carefully wiped each pane. I stood watching for a while, then walked over and took the towel from her hand. "Let me do it. Let the men take care of these things." She looked up at me for the first time. I saw her eyes moist with gratitude. "You sound like someone else's husband," she laughed. Teasingly, her voice was soft, but I could hear the joy in it. It was just a simple sentence, but it warmed my heart. All afternoon that summer, I decided to apply for a full-time job. I wanted my mother to stop working, at least not to do the tiring cleaning like she was doing now. Anush would never say it, but her thin shoulders and sweaty back were the clearest indications. I started making plans. I would take a few days off when I had a regular job, and then take my mother somewhere, just a short trip, just an hour, to get her out of the tiring shifts, just enough for me to say thank you. I decided to tell her about my intention one morning in late June while we were having breakfast. "Mom, can you take 2 days off? Want to take you to the beach." She looked up, surprised. "The beach? What for? Let's go to." "Thank you, Mom. Let's go so you can rest a bit. It's been a long time since you had a vacation." She was silent for a moment. I knew she was hesitating, not because she didn't want to go, but because she was worried about me, worried about the expenses, worried about the things she hadn't done. But then she smiled. "Then I'll take a day off, just 2 days," and nodded, and felt my heart lightened, perhaps for the first time since my father passed away. I saw her actually looking forward to something. In the following days, I went online to find a hotel room and planned a trip. I tried not to tell my mother the real cost, afraid that she would refuse. I just said, "Everything is fine, don't worry." I didn't know what was waiting for us at that beach, but I knew in my heart I was ready to do what I should have done a long time ago. Love the woman who had quietly become my mother without any paper or bloodline to confirm it. I could not have imagined that just a week before our first trip to the beach, something happened that made us blush and not dare to look each other in the eye. For several days, it all started on a normal Sunday morning. I told my mother thought I was going to visit an old school friend in the next town. He had just moved and invited me over to visit Anto, discuss finding a job since we had both just graduated. My mother nodded, as usual, without asking much. She always respected my personal space, even though I knew she was always quietly observing and caring. I left home at 10 o'clock in Themer, and the sun was mild. The sea breeze was cool. My mother wore a light floral shirt, her hair tied up high, and stood to see me off at the door as if I was about to go far. Away I even turned back and joked, "Remember to rest at home. Don't clean anything. If you come back and see him climbing up the window, you won't be at peace." She laughed. "Aren't you afraid that I'll chase you away with a broom?" She laughed then. I left not knowing that I would be back sooner than expected. My friend texted me to cancel the appointment as soon as I arrived. "Sorry, my mom is sick and has to be to Kento, the hospital. See you another time." I didn't blame him instead. I turned around and headed back. It wasn't far, and I was home before noon. The door was unlocked. Usual, I pushed the door open, intending to call out, "Mom, I'm home," but then stopped because I didn't hear any noise. I guessed that Mom was taking a nap, something she rarely did until I walked to the hallway leading to the back of the house, intending to go into my room to get my phone to charge. Theba through a door was ajar, the sound of running water and soft singing Mom's voice. Before my mind could process it, I pushed the door open and unconscious a bit. I had when I thought no one was inside, and then it happened. In the misty mist of the mirror, I saw my mother. Her back turned, her loosely tied hair hanging down water, running down the curve of her shoulders, was tilting her head back to rinse. Completely unaware that someone had just entered, we both screamed. Almost at the same time, I slammed the door shut, my heart pounding like a drum. "Mom, I'm sorry, thought no one was there," I shouted from outside, my face burning. In the bathroom, the water turned off. "Oh my God, Daniel, you're making my heart drop. I didn't know what to do, but stand there frozen." After a moment, I heard my mother giggle as if she too found the situation too funny to be angry about when Mom came out wearing long-sleeved pajamas, her hair still wet. I was sitting on the sofa, staring at the table like a student being punished. She walked slowly, looking a little embarrassed, but then she broke the silence first. "You didn't see anything, did you?" I quickly waved my hand, my eyes still not daring to look straight. No, I swear. "I didn't see anything. I closed the door right away." "Really?" Mom laughed more gently. "Yes, I'm old. I'm afraid you'll be scared again. If you see something," I laughed, only now daring to look up. "No. But if you see something, will you kick me out of the house?" She narrowed, her eyes half teasing, half serious. "No, but you won't have dinner tonight." The two of us looked at each other, then burst out laughing. The laughter was gentle, as if washing away the awkwardness from earlier. I saw her eyes light up, not with embarrassment anymore, but with a strange kind of tenderness, as if she could also feel between us. There was no longer any distance. That became one of the funniest memories I had with my mother. Later, when I mentioned it, she always pretended to hit me. "If you mention it again, I will ban you from coming here." I never thought that a stepmother-stepdaughter relations could become so close. Maybe because we didn't start with coercion, but with empathy. Maybe because both Mimother and I had lost each other, and thanks to that, we understood better the value of buying together. After that day, my mother suddenly said to me, "Why don't I go buy a swimsuit for the trip first?" I widened my eyes. "You're wearing a swimsuit? I'm going to sit on the shore and watch you swim. It's boring." I didn't say anything, just felt strangely happy. That trip, I know, will be the most memorable trip of my life. I had never been to the beach with my mother, not my biological mother or my stepmother. With my biological mother, the only memories I had were of going to the park or the small supermarket near our house. Since my mother Laura came into my life, most of her time was spent working long shifts, doing laundry, cooking, and other nameless tasks that people rarely paid attention to. So I decided, even if it was just 2 days and 1 night, to Dad wanted my mother to have some real peace. Just for once, I chose a coastal town about 2 hours drive from home. It wasn't as crowded as other famous beaches, but the water was clear, the sand was soft, and the air was peaceful enough for a woman like my mother, who had sacrificed her youth to have a proper rest. I booked a small hotel room with a balcony overlooking the sea. The room wasn't luxurious, but it was bright, clean, and most importantly, there was enough space for the two of us to enjoy an evening watching the sunset together. I lied to me mother about the price of the room, of course. If she knew I had spent almost all my savings on booking and preparing for the trip, she would not have agreed. But for me, it was a necessary gift, not to repay her, because nothing could ever be enough but to say I know you have done a lot for me. A week before the trip, I saw my mother open the old tablet that I had helped her install Facebook. On, she searched for modest swimsuits for seniors. I walked by, pretending not to notice, but inside I was indescribably happy. My mother had never been to the beach since I knew her. She was afraid of water of strangers and doffed herself. But this time she took the initiative that night during dinner. She said absent-mindedly, I've ordered a set not too short, but the color is a bit bright. Don't laugh at me. I put down my chopsticks and looked at her. No, I also thank you for going with me. She smiled, cut a small piece of fish and put it in my bowl. If you don't go, who will take care of me? The day we left, the sky was clear. I drove. My mother sat next to me holding an old cloth bag containing a few sets of clothes, sunscreen, and a thick paperback book. It was a habit Shahad kept for many years. Even though she didn't have time, she still brought books with her as a way to not forget that her soul needed to be cared for. On the way we listened to music, I played old songs, the kind my father used to like, and my mother did too. She didn't say much, only occasionally turning to me and smiling once she put her hand on my arm when the car stopped at a red light, then softly said, if your father knew you were taking me to the beach like this, he would be very happy. I didn't, and Surges nodded slightly. His throat tightened. He must be smiling somewhere far away. We arrived at noon. The small hotel was located right on the beach, and Thessalty wind blew through the old wooden doors. When I entered the room, Mom stood for a while on the balcony looking out at the ocean in the distance. The blue sea was rippling, the sky was cloudless. I don't remember the last time I saw the ocean. She said, her voice as light as the wind. I put down my suitcase and walked closer. Than today, I will remember it very well. That afternoon we walked along the beach. I that afternoon bought 2 mango smoothies, the only drink Mom called both delicious and decent. Mom wore a long dress, a wide-brimmed hat, and slippers that she only used indoors. Watching Mom walk on the sand, a little limping because Shua's not used Deadeye, suddenly found her strangely adorable. When the sun was milder, Mom agreed to sit on the deck chair to sunbathe. I handed her the tube of sunscreen. She looked at me hesitantly and said, please help me apply it on my back. I can't reach it. I nodded, carefully applying the cream evenly, avoiding the eyes of passers-by, not because I was shy, but because I felt so natural and familiar that I didn't want anyone to interfere. A few people passing by looked at. The mother and son had smiled. Maybe they thought we were a strange couple, a charming middle-aged woman and a young man taking good care of her, but we didn't explain anything. We knew who we were to each other, and that was enough. In the afternoon, I invited my mother to go down to the water. She waved her hand. You go down first. I'm not used to cold water. I'll sit up here and watch the things. I looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Then I'll swim quickly and come up. I left thinking to myself that I would go buy something for her, maybe cool fresh coconut like she liked. I didn't expect that my brief absence would cause her to panic so much. When I earned back holding a coconut still wet, I saw my mother running along the beach. Her dress soaked her eyes, panicked, her feet covered in sand. She was calling my name loudly as if she was screaming in the middle of the sea, her eyes weir, extremely panicked. I shouted, Mom, it's me. She paused, looked at me as if Shekel didn't believe her eyes, then rushed to hug me tightly amidst the astonished eyes of the people around. I thought he thought I had lost you, she spoke through sobs, her head resting on my chest as if she wanted to listen to my heartbeat, to believe that I was still here. Really? I hugged her, patting her back gently. No, Mom, I just went to buy coconuts for you later, she said. I looked at my watch. 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. I didn't see you, I called, but you didn't answer. I thought you were swept away by the waves that night on the hotel balcony. Mother and son sat side by side watching the sunset fall onto the sea. Neither of us said anything for a long time then. My mother smiled softly. The sea is still scary to me. I turned to look at her half jokingly. Don't be afraid, the sea is not as scary as leaving you alone. She laughed, the first genuine laugh in months. I didn't know how long I could make my mother happy, but at least in that moment I knew I had done the right thing. The first trip, an afternoon in the middle of the sea, and a hug that I will never forget. After the hug on the beach I asked her the afternoon. I clearly felt something in my mother open like a door that had been closed because affectation, because of reserve, because of fear of becoming a replacement, and I understood that feelings, no matter how sincere, still need a moment to deeply touch people's hearts. We started the second day at the beach. In silence, Mom woke up earlier than me. As usual, when I woke up, she was sitting on the balcony, her hair tied up, holding the thick book from the day before. The sun had not yet risen high. The sea was still pale blue, like a piece of silk that had not been ironed out. She glanced at me, smiled, walking along the beach slightly after a simple breakfast at a small cafe. Right below the hotel, we decided to take another walk along the beach. No schedule, no destination. Just walking together. Mom did not wear sandals. Her feet were bare on the sand. The sand was soft and cool. She said it had been a long time since she felt the ground beneath her feet. Not the kitchen floor, not the restaurant floor, but something soft and soothing. I walked beside her sometimes, looking down, seeing her footprints next to mine, two parallel lines, sometimes out of sync, but not apart. We didn't talk much. The sea meadow make people not need words. When we reached a deserted stretch, Mom stoppage, looked into the distance, her eyes slightly squinting from the sun. Then she said, without warning, when I was young, you wanted to be a teacher. I was surprised, Mom. She nodded, her voice soft as if she were telling someone else's story. When I finished high school, I enrolled in a teacher training program, but then my mother, your grandmother, fell seriously ill. She dropped out halfway to stay home and take care of her. That's her personality. She can't do two things at once. I was silent, slowing down. Have you ever regretted it? I asked. No, she said immediately. Without thinking, Bex, I learned more than any lecture hall could ever teach. Like how to keep quiet when you're tired, how to listen, Tozame, and breathe, how to hold hands without squeezing. I swallowed a sigh. So if you could choose again, would you go to school? She turned to me, her eyes shining with a gentle light. No, if you could choose again, I would still want to meet your father. I would still want you. He paused. My heart felt as if someone had touched it with two very light fingers, you know. I said I used to think of you as a replacement, not because you did anything wrong, but because I never thought anyone else would come into my life. After you, but after yesterday, I understand one thing: you don't replace Yon. You are you, and that's enough. She looked at me for a long time, then she reached out, and for the first time, gently stroked my cheek, as my mother had done. Her hand was thin and bony, but cool and real. Thank you, Daniel. At noon, we returned to the hotel. To rest, I planned to go swimming in the sea again in the afternoon, and this time I would definitely invite my mother to go with me. Even if it was just for a few minutes, I prepared 2 sets of towel, sunscreen, and a folding chair so that my mother could sit closer to the water. When I entered the room, my mother waistring on the swimsuit. She had just bought a swimsuit so modest that it almost looked like a short skirt. Waddy, you think, Mom? She asked a little shilly. I smiled, giving her a thumbs up. Beautiful. Very suitable, I feel. A little weird. I've never worn anything like this before, she muttered, pulling lightly on them of her shirt. It's okay. Mom, look around. Everyone wears swimsuits. Bezadiziar. Really beautiful, she narrowed. Her eyes. Are you flattering me? I shrugged. No, I'm just telling the truth. That afternoon, my mother stepped into the sea for the first time. Indicates she did not swim. Just stood at the edge of the water, letting the wave shit her feet every time a wave came. She was startled, then laughed like a child. Swam nearby, trying not to take my eyes off my mother, looking at her in the vast ocean and sky. I suddenly realized that something. She was no longer just a woman I was grateful for, but someone I truly lived. Not a romantic feeling, not even a simple admiration, but a deep feeling, a bond that transcended blood or definition. As the sun began to set, we returned to the hotel before dinner. I took a small box out of my backpack as if I had prepared before the trip. Mom, I called, handing it to her. Open it, Nancy. She was surprised. Opening the box, inside was a thin necklace, small silver heart-shaped pendant engraved with the words Mom by heart. She wasn't for a long time. Her hands trembled as she touched the words. Then she looked up, her eyes red. Daniel, why did you? I sat down next to her softly. I know. I'm not related to you by blood, Butif. I could choose again. I would still want you to be the one by my side these past years. You wouldn't replace any O'Neills. You're the one I'm grateful for and love with all my heart. She bit her lip, tears rolling down her cheeks, but she didn't turn away, didn't hide. She put the necklace around her neck, then hugged me. This time the hug was no longer shy, no longer distant. It seemed to say everything we had kept in our hearts for so long. That night before I went to sleep, I heard the sound of waves coming from the balcony. Mom was fast asleep. Booty still lie awake, staring at the dark ceiling and thinking about my father. I hope somewhere he is seeing this and smiling. because in the end we found each other not by arrangement but by true love. Accumulated day by day, we left the beach. The next morning, on the way back with silent regret before leaving the hotel, Mom stood on the balcony for a long time. The early wind blew a few strands of hair. The early light made the sea surface look like silver. I stood behind, saying nothing there. Are moments that don't need words, just being there is enough. On the way back, Mom didn't say much, neither did but I saw her tightly holding her handbag where the necklace it gave. Her was as if it were a part of a memory that had just taken shape. Not yet durried, the car drove through the grassy fields, past the worn-out billboards through the curves. I used to take with Dad, I don't know since when, but every long trip made me miss Dad so muckum. I spoke when the car stopped at the gas station. I want to ask you something, Mom. Turned around, waiting. If I have a family in the future, will you still live with me? She was surprised, then she smiled slightly, the somewhat mocking smile that only experienced people have. Aren't you afraid that your wife won't like you? No, I answered immediately. If Somione doesn't like you, I probably don't like them either. She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes told me. That she'd heard and believed every word. We returned home in the afternoon. Small house was still the same as 2 days before, but the atmosphere had changed. It was as if, after the trip, I had welcomed different people, closer, more understanding. I carried my luggage into the room, and my mother went into the kitchen, as it was her habit, but a moment later she came out empty-handed, standing in front of my door. Daniel, she called. I have something to say. I turned around surprised. I've been thinking for a long time about going back to school. I raised my eyebrows. What are you going to study? It's probably nursing for the elderly, or community nursing. I know I'm not young anymore, Booty. I think I still have the energy to learn. Besides, if I want to help others, I have to understand them better, right? I'm not adunable to hide my joy. I'll help you register. Let's find an evening class. Mom smiled, her eyes lighting up. Thank you. It's not that I want to do anything big. It's just I don't want the rest of my life to be just days of going to work and going to bed. I want to live. I looked at my mother, and that look at my mother meant not just as a mother, but as a woman who was rewriting her own life. A person who had once chosen to step back, leaving her life for others, was now starting to step forward for herself, and I felt my heart swell, not with pride but with emotion, because my mother was not only the one who raised me, she was also proof that it is never too late to start something new. A few days after returning, Mom started waking up earlier than usual, not to cook or clean, but to sit at the dining table, open her old laptop, and look up community courses. I walked by many times, not bothering her, but every time I caught a glimpse of Mom's eyes lighting up at the screen, I felt strangely warm. One day, she said, I saw a weekend class at the center near the bus station. The instructor is a retired doctor. Do you think I should try it? I nodded immediately. If I don't try it, how will I know if it's a good fit? Mom pursed her lips, trying to hide her smile. She was always like that, and when she was most serious, she was also the happiest. We started making a habit of cooking together. On the weekends, Mom let me choose the dishes, and she took care of the ingredients. An instruction stanner became a part of life that I looked forward to, not because of the delicious food, but because of theater and presence. One time while chopping onions, I asked casually if Dad were still alive. Waddy, you think he would say when he saw you going back to school? She paused for a moment, then said he would say, Laura, you finally decided to live for yourself. She looked at me, her eyes sparkling, but not sad, and I think Hewald, thank you for staying. Autumn came early. The leaves on the porch turned crimson. The small house was now used to having two people meet each other every day, not out of duty but out of attachment. Every time I saw Mom leave the house with her bag of books, I no longer saw her as a woman who knew how to sacrifice. She was someone who was moving forward, not to forget the past, but to write a new chapter in her life. One night, while I was cleaning the dishes, I took the heart-shaped necklace out of my pocket, something my mother wore every day, but today she took it off to avoid getting it wet. I looked at the small words engraved on it, Mom, by heart, and I understood my mother was not Justin. My life is someone who married my father, but was a person I had chosen unconsciously through the years, through each hug, each meal, each understanding silence. I looked up and called softly, Mom. She turned back. What I will always be here. You know that, right? Shedden answered. She just nodded very slightly. In that small kitchen, amidst the soft yellow lights, I realized love doesn't need to be noisy or bound by names. True love is when a woman who is not related to you by blood still gives you the best things in her life, and when you, in a very natural way, call her mother. One Sunday morning, my mother invited me to go to the farmer's market in the suburbs. Usually, such invitations meant that I had to carry a lot of things, but I always agreed because I knew that these seemingly trivial tasks were the way for my mother and I to have time together away from the daily grind. We walked along the stall selling vegetables, fruits and fresh flowers, then stopped at a ceramic stall. My mother picked up a rough enamel cup engraved with the words "Family isn't always blood." She stared at the word "Silent Lifer." A long time I stood by, not saying anything, only when she placed the cup in my hand and said, "You keep it, it suits you better." Did I nod slightly that evening? I sat down to write in my diary, a new habit I had started after the trip to the beach. I wrote about my mother, about the little things that had happened in the past 3 months, the way she smiled when she cut her hand and said, "It's not as painful as when I was a widow," the way she persuaded the fishmonger to lower the price with her charming laugh, or the way she looked at me and nodded when I told her I was fine. Then I stopped writing and wrote, "I lost my mother, but life sent me another mother, not of flesh and blood, but of faith, patience, and unending love. She didn't try to be my mother, but somehow she was for a long time on my parents' wedding anniversary. Even though my father was gone, my mother always cooked a special dinner. She didn't say it, but I knew it was her way of preserving the memories for both of us. I helped her prepare the food, then placed 2 sets of bowls and chopsticks in the table. As always, my mother stood for a moment in front of my father's portrait, her hand lightly touching through wooden frame. Then she turned back, her eyes gentler than ever. "Tonight your father will eat with us, right?" I nodded, poured a small glass of wine, and placed it next to the portrait. At dinner, there were no tears, there were only the sounds of laughter, the gentle sounds of chopsticks, and gratitude spreading throughout the small room. I often told my friends about my mother. Some people wondered, "Isn't she my biological mother?" I replied, "No, but she didn't have to give birth to me to be my mother." Then I told about the trip to the beach, about the hug and waves, about the necklace with the tiny words engraved on it. They listened, then nodded, and I knew that story, the story between me and my mother, had overcome prejudice. It was something right necessary, a proof that love doesn't always need blood to be deep, doesn't need legal ties to last. Today, as I write these last lines, I'm sitting in the backyard. Mom has just finished watering the plants, holding a book and a cup of coffee, the cup that says "Family isn't always blood." She sits down on the chair next to me, saying nothing. I am silent too. We know each other too well to need to fill the void with words a wind blows. I look up, look at the blue sky, listen to the birds, and somewhere the sound of waves from far away echoes like the echoes from Thattrip, and I think to myself, the sea is not just a place with waves, the sea is also where I found my family again in an unexpected way, and my mother, the woman who once thought she'd lost her way into my life, turned out to be the destination. Thank you for listening. Tummy Story.